I called time, went to the AD and said, every student on the front row, they got to go. Hey everyone, welcome into the podcast. It's been a minute, so glad to be reconnecting with y'all. I hope you had a good summer season and that you're getting ready for a good fall season. I don't know if that'll be on the baseball field or if you're like me and taking a break and going on a football field. Wanted to go through with you today some email questions that have come in. You're always welcome to send your questions to me, Patrick at umpireclassroom.com. So just wanted to respond to some of these, get some answers out there, and I'll share them with everybody while we're here. So we'll go through some emails and respond to that. Now, while you haven't seen a lot of me over the last couple of months, I've been super busy working on the 2026 preseason course that we're going to put out for Umpire Classroom. And we did the 2025 course last year. That was the first one that we did a wide release. And I think overall it's had a lot of great success. We've had some great feedback. States like Georgia used it for all their umpire training across the state, replacing the classroom requirements with Umpire Classroom. And there was a lot of advantage to that. You don't have to drive to meet in person. You don't have the bad in-person meetings that you all have been a part of. A lot of great benefits to it. And as we get ready with the 2026 course, we're looking for other states and associations that might want to implement it. We've had associations at more of the local levels using it previously. So if it's something that you're interested in for your association, reach out to me. We can get you access to the 2025 course so you can see how that worked. And then we can keep you up to date as we get the 2026 course ready to go. And again, the idea behind the course is that it will replace at least some of the in-person trainings that you were planning to do, at least the classroom stuff. And then when you do meet in person, you can focus on mechanics and cage work, things that actually require you to be in person, but at the same time, cut down on the in-person, tedious, Monday or Sunday night meetings that you're driving an hour there and back for. Cut down on those, really be member-focused, and ultimately provide a better training experience for your members. So again, if you're interested in that, reach out to me, Patrick at umpireclassroom.com. So our first question comes from Dan. I'm reaching out to ask for clarification regarding the NFHS rules on pitcher reentry as a pitcher. If a starting pitcher is substituted for in the third inning, is that pitcher eligible to return and pitch again in the sixth inning under NFHS rules? This one has many of us stumped in our association. I appreciate your time and any insight you can provide on this. So this question trips up a lot of people, and I gotta be honest with you, it's really not an issue that you're probably ever gonna run into in an NFHS game. And the reason is we need to look at Rule 3-1-2, which covers pitchers and substitutions. It states that a player may be removed as the pitcher and return as the pitcher only once per inning, provided that return doesn't violate other pitching substitution or charge conference limits. So that rule doesn't say anything about how many times they can pitch in an inning or how many times they can pitch in a game. All it says is that a player can only be removed from pitching and then put back on the mound one time per inning. So let's say your pitcher here in this scenario where he's the starting pitcher and the third inning gets pulled, so long as he doesn't violate other substitution rules, so like we know that he was a starter, so he has his reentry, so long as he doesn't violate those rules, he is able to come back into the game and pitch. So, he could have come off the mound and gone to a defensive position and now come back, or he could have been removed from the game and then re-enter in the sixth inning either directly to the mound or even to a position on the field and then go into pitch in the sixth. There's just a swapping of positions. But so long as he doesn't violate the re-entry rules, he's allowed to do that. In fact, a pitcher could, let's just say it's a relief pitcher in the second inning. The starter starts the inning, we bring in the relief pitcher. The relief pitcher goes out from pitching but then goes to first base and we bring the first baseman into pitch. And then after a batter, we can swap the first baseman and the pitcher again to then put that relief pitcher back on the mound. And then again, he can come off the mound. At that point, he can't go back on the mound because he's already been removed and returned to the mound once in that inning. Now, he was allowed to be removed again, but you can't follow that up with the removed and returned. So really, a kid can go back on the mound quite a bit in a game. So it's very rare that this is going to get violated. But just know that that's what really matters is, was a player removed and then returned in that inning? If so, they can only do that one time. Our second email comes from David, and we're going to be breaking down a situation that he had. The game was the second of a 3-game series, and I was the home plate umpire. One of the teams had some really chippy players, and I wasn't present at the first game of the series, but I heard that something happened after the game. I asked the umpires who worked that game what had occurred, and they said nothing noteworthy happened. In addition, the game that I worked on was played on a multi-purpose field. The dugouts are adjacent to each other. After the end of the top of the third inning, I saw that one of the chippy players was in a heated exchange with a parent of a player on the opposing team. I went to the coach of the team and told him to ensure that his players do not engage with any fans. I didn't want to eject anyone because of the nature of the game. Later in the same game, the coach of the team came to me and complained that his players were being taunted and intimidated. I acknowledged him and said I would speak with the other team's coach. My base umpire said that he didn't hear anything unusual. The game proceeded to the end without further incident. My question is, how could I have handled this game better? Can I warn players or coaches about things I didn't see or hear? Should I have warned both coaches together to keep their teams under control? Thanks for your opinion and advice. So this has the potential to be a complex situation, right? We're in a championship game. It's youth baseball, or at least, it's not professional baseball. It's not collegiate baseball. We're not playing in like a real stadium, right? If both dugouts are adjacent to each other, this is not the World Series. There's not a big security service there, and we probably don't have paying fans. But even if we do, it really doesn't excuse any interactions between fans and the opposing players. And far too often, we let way too much of this go. We let it go at the youth level, at the high school level. I think we let way too much go at the collegiate level. And we even let too much go at the professional level. Earlier this year, we saw a player in an MLB game break down crying because of some very obnoxious abuse he was getting from the fans. And there's really no place for that in sports. Not what we're doing at the professional level, and certainly not when we get to amateur level players or just young players. Sports are supposed to be developmental of character and not developmental of thick skin because of verbal abuse. So there's no room for that, and we need to not be afraid to address that as the neutral third party, as really the only neutral third party at the game being the umpires. Now, we're not getting like super involved with the fans, and we're not giving them a big ejection mechanic, but we can absolutely have them removed. I worked a state semifinal game this year, and the home team, they've got their student section there, and I start hearing some questionable things out of them, and then I start hearing them calling somebody a midget. Not necessarily the most socially acceptable word. Probably shouldn't call anybody that, but it's not being addressed by the home crowd or by the the game management, and these things bubble up and they very quickly spill onto the field. And it's one thing to work through the progression of ignore, acknowledge, respond, warn, and eject when it's between you and a player or a coach, but anytime we have team versus team or coach going at coach, those situations bubble fast. And those are the things that get you on YouTube way more than just a coach argues at you and you eject them. Those things get out of control quickly. And so we need to be prepared to address those. And those things on the field, they shouldn't have an impact on our game. So like in my situation, after a couple minutes and deciding game management wasn't going to do anything, I called time, went to the AD and said, every student on the front row, they got to go. They're done. They got to go. We're not going to keep playing unless they go. Now, that wasn't a formal ejection because, as we know, NFHS rules, we can't formally eject fans, but we can absolutely get them removed from the game, period, especially for things that do not belong in youth sports. And the way you do that is you don't go directly to them. You go to the home management, or like if we're at a neutral site or whatever, maybe you go to the team that they're cheering for, which is always obvious. There is nobody showing up to a youth baseball game that doesn't care about either team winning and then is still being a jack, okay? That's not going to happen. So you can pretty much decide which team they're with, but go to their home management and say, they got to go. What's going to happen if you don't make them go? Well, then I'm either going to eject you. We're certainly not going to keep playing. We'll find consequences. And by the way, your state association, if they find out that you requested someone's removal and they didn't do it, big fines. I'm familiar with the fines that I've heard of GHSA levying for that. They'll get the message real quick that that's unacceptable, and it is unacceptable. But so in a situation like this, I bring that up because, the emailer said that he went to the coach and said, hey, you got to control your players. And that's correct. He does need to do that. But at the same time, these are not professional level players, and we don't have paying fans that paid enough to abuse youth, right? And a coach is going to have a valid argument. So you're going to let them just talk shit to my kids and then you get on me about it? So we need to have some kind of addressing with the opposing team. Again, we don't go talk directly to the fans, but if we're at a neutral site or if they're the home team, whatever, either we're getting a game manager to address it, or if there's not a game manager, then we're getting the head coach and we're saying, hey, I'm not going to have this in my game today. This is ridiculous. We're not going to have any fans harassing 18 and 17-year-olds and 16-year-olds, and then gets disturbingly lower. So you need to address that. You got to handle it, or you're not going to be around all day to see the end of this game. My concern here, again, is just that it's not just on the player and the coach to keep their cool when they're being verbally abused at an amateur sporting event. And I do think it's over the top at college athletic events, but certainly we don't need it here. Now, can we warn for something that we didn't see or hear? The answer is no, in that we can't formally warn. I can't formally write out a dugout restriction for something I did not see or hear. And you will be very surprised how often people tell you, you'll be surprised how often a coach or a player complains about something that their team has absolutely done more and or worse before. We've all had the abuse as officials, and as soon as you even lightly return something back at them, they act offended. I can't believe you'd speak to me that way. All that nonsense. So things get blown out of proportion by opposing teams, especially when they're tattling on somebody else. So you can't rely on that as, oh, they told me this. Well, yeah, here's a formal dugout restriction or what have you. But you can warn verbally. And there are different levels of warning, not formally written anywhere, but there are different levels of warning. There's, hey, that's enough, or guys, we're not going to do that today. Those are things that can be pretty loud and demonstrative and get that message out there. But if I'm hearing some shit that okay, if that's true, that's a problem and it's got to be addressed, then I'll go to the coach of that team or that player or whatever and say, hey, this is what I heard. I don't have any validity to it. I don't know. Obviously, though, if this is happening, it's unacceptable and will need to be addressed. So if you can keep an eye out for it and then you can address it, if it is there, coach, you're going to be a lot happier with the way you address it than the way I address it. So I don't know that it's happening, but now I'm kind of keeping an eye out for it a little bit more. Try to help me out with this. And if you give a coach that warning, they're usually going to be, okay, yeah, I got you. I'll help you out with that. They might start coming at you back with, well, they're doing this and that. And then you just say, trust me, I'm looking for it too. If I see it, I will address it. But you handle your team. I'll try to work with them to handle theirs. Understood? And then just leave the conversation. The last part of the question was, should I have gotten both coaches together to address it? This is more of a football mechanic, and I don't know, maybe it goes back to a Civil War battlefield and we're bringing both sides out across the battlefield. I'm not a big fan of this because it makes it look like you as the officiating crew have decided we don't have any power to control this anymore, so I need you two to come out and I need you two to actually be the ones that take control and lead things here. And I just don't really like the look of that. I would much rather call time, stop the game, and then I go individually to each dugout and I tell the coach directly, you address this and you go deal with your fans, or you're not going to be around for the rest of the game to see it, or I'm going to restrict you to the dugout, so all you have to focus on is your fans. I'm not a big fan of the bringing everybody out, but go directly to each team and address it that way, and then give them some time to address it with their fans, right? I'm not going to start this. I'm telling you right now, this needs to be dealt with. We're not dealing with it. Go address it now. Get your AD, whoever, or you go speak to them directly. We're not going to start this game up until you've had that conversation. Something like that. I just think that's a better look and a more control than me going at it than coaches, I need you to come here because I can't handle it anymore. I try to avoid that look as much as possible. So, David, thanks for the question. Hope that helped. Our next email comes from no name, but I appreciate the email. It says, first off, I just want to say how much I love your channel. I have learned so much from it and greatly appreciate all your work you do to put such great content out there. I'm in need of some clarification about batter's interference, specifically on throws to third base. This is a YouTube link of a play in question and would love to get your thoughts on it. This happened at a summer league game in underclass division that follows NFHS rules. There are 2 outs prior to the pitch. The field umpire called the base runner safe on the play, and after he did so, the plate umpire called the batter out for interference for the 3rd out of the inning. Thanks again, and I look forward to getting your input. So I'll have the video showing on the YouTube, but if you're listening to the podcast version of this, you're not missing a whole lot. It's a right-handed batter. Runner is stealing third base. As the catcher comes up, right-handed batter, he had a pretty wide stance, brings it together a little bit after the pitch, and just steps back a little bit with his right foot, and the throw does not retire the runner at third. Now, the relevant rule we need for this is going to be in Rule 7, which covers batting, and then Section 3. Batting infractions. A batter shall not, Article 5, interfere with the catcher's fielding or throwing by A, leaning over home plate, B, stepping out of the batter's box, C, making any other movement, including follow-through interference, which hinders actions at home plate or the catcher's attempt to play on a runner. Penalty. When an attempt to put out a runner at any other base is unsuccessful, the batter is out and all runners must return to bases occupied at the time of the pitch. So batter's interference, and this is one of those that ends up on way too many of those YouTube shorts of you make the call that I just really cannot stand that much anymore. It's a tough rule, and is it the most fair rule in the world? Probably not. It is what it is. Basically, the batter, he has to stay in his position that he was in to hit the ball. That's the only place he's protected. He's not protected just by being in the batter's box. He has to be pretty much where he was in the batter's box in his position to hit the ball. Now, the exception being if he's in the batter's box and then he steps back to not get hit by a pitch and that, interferes with the catcher then come out of the throw, then we ignore that because he's allowed to complete the actions of being a batter basically and avoiding being hit. But in the video that we have here, he has a wide stance, takes the pitch, stands up. I probably would have protected him there. But once he takes that foot back that step back with his right foot, that would be batter's interference. And, I don't personally feel that you need to super rush to make this call. I usually will see a little bit more. Now, this play ended up being fairly close at third base, so you got to get it. But I'll be honest with you, the lower the level we get and the lower the quality of baseball, and especially the lower the chance that you are even close to retiring that runner, then, and we can make some interpretations there too, right? Has to interfere with a play. If I don't think you had any chance of making a play, and that's again, the pretty liberal definition of a play, use your judgment, use some feel for the game. This is a high level game. It's definitely interference. It's a good call. So again, he's protected to be in his position wherever he is in the box. If the pitch causes him to move in the box, he's protected for that. But if he swings and loses his balance and then moves, that losing his balance and then moving somewhere else that's not just the swing, that would be interference. again, stepping out, even if he thinks he's getting out of the way but isn't, that's interference. It's a tough rule for batters. That's just what it is. Our next email comes from Larry in Ohio. I've been watching your series and think you and your fellow umpires in Georgia are doing a great service. Background: I started doing Little League when I was 12 and my first summer high school game at 14. That beginning in 1968. Here's the play. R3 stealing home. You had a scenario with R3 stealing home. In the example, the batter was leaving the batter's box prior to the pitch crossing the plate. My question is, if F2 steps up or reaches across the plate, would this be a call of obstruction by F2? Thank you again for your great series. So first of all, let's not overthink the rules around a batter leaving the box, because a lot of people see that and they think, oh, that's an automatic strike or this or that. It's not. There's a lot of people making stuff up with that. Let's look at the relevant rules first of all. So Rule 7, Section 3, we're looking at batting infractions. A batter shall not. And Article 1 does say a batter may not leave the box except XYZ. But you'll notice that this rule really only focuses on delay of game. And that's even more clear when we look at the penalty. If the batter leaves the batter's box, delays the game, and none of the above exceptions apply, the plate umpire shall charge a strike to the batter. So there's a list of exceptions to when a batter can step out, and they're not the most relevant things to you at the moment. But just looking at this rule, the key is that it has to be a delay of game. So if the pitcher's still throwing the pitch, it's not a delay of game. Now, we won't let the batter step out of the box and the pitcher box because he sees the batter step out and then doesn't deliver the pitch. We're not going to count that as a balk or anything like that, but there has to be the delay of game aspect. Now in Article 5, we do have the stepping out of the batter's box being a part of that, and then the penalty when there are 2 outs, the batter is out. But that Article 5 starts with the batter shall not, and they're out when the batter interferes with the catcher's fielding or throwing by stepping out of the batter's box. Then the batter is out as the penalty. But again, we didn't have any interference by the batter with the catcher in this scenario. So his stepping out of the box because the runner's coming home, that doesn't interfere with the catcher. So we're not getting a penalty there. So this leads us to the question of, if that batter leaves the batter's box, can we have obstruction by the catcher? And the answer is yes, regardless of whether or not the batter could or could not have reached the ball. If a catcher steps on or over the plate, that is by rule obstruction. We have to enforce it. That's going to result in the runner scoring from third and the batter being awarded first. So that's just a quick mailbag episode. Hope this is helpful to all of you covering some of these scenarios. Again, if you have your own questions, feel free to send them my way, patrick@umpireclassroom.com. We can all learn by going through these, so it's very helpful when you do send things like that. And again, we're looking for organizations that can help us with growing the online course and really transforming the way we do our umpire education at the high school and youth levels. So if you're interested in that, reach out to me. Would love to get you hooked up with access to the 2025 course that you can share with your members and that you can discuss and think about, and keep you up to date on that. Reach out to me on either of those, patrick@umpireclassroom.com. So again, thanks so much for listening. Thanks for being a part of the Umpire Classroom community and helping me to transform how we educate umpires. And as always, I look forward to seeing you on the field.